So next in Operation Accountability series, following on from the Slave Trade Act 1873, we're going to look at Hague 4, Laws and Customs of War on Land. So where I'm at now is the IHL, International Humanitarian Law databases. And this is their account of Hague 4. But I'm going to be reading from the copy that I printed out from the Australian Treaty Series from info.Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade.gov.au that I just went to and I couldn't find Hague 4. I'm not suggesting that they've deleted it, but I'm suggesting that they've changed something and they've made it harder to find. Almost like they're covering tracks, but not to get bogged down in conspiracy. Right, so I'll be reading from the Australian Treaty Series, and you can, if you are watching, listening on a device that is facilitating, you can read and listen and note the differences in what's presented here. So, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Canberra, International Convention Concerning the Laws and Customs of War on Land, Hague 4. The Hague, 18 October 1907. Entry into force for Australia and generally 26 January 1910. So there's your occupation day. Australian Treaty Series 1910, number 8. Copyright Commonwealth of Australia 1999. I don't know how you copyright a treaty, but anyway. So, International Convention Concerning the Laws and Customs of War on Land. Okay, so in the preamble, what you're looking at, it says list of contracting parties. So I'm going to read this list because it's fascinating of itself. His Majesty the King of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, and of the British dominions beyond the seas. Emperor of India, His Majesty the German Emperor, King of Prussia, the President of the United States of America, the President of the Argentine Republic, His Majesty the Emperor of Austria, King of Bohemia, etc., and Apostolic King of Hungary, His Majesty the King of the Belgians, the President of the Republic of Bolivia, the President of the Republic of the United States of Brazil, His Royal Highness the Prince of Bulgaria, the President of the Republic of Chile, the President of the Republic of Colombia, the Provisional Governor of the Republic of Cuba, His Majesty the King of Denmark, the President of the Dominican Republic, the President of the Republic of Ecuador, the President of the French Republic, His Majesty the King of the Hellenes, the President of the Republic of Guatemala, the President of the Republic of Haiti, His Majesty the King of Italy, His Majesty the Emperor of Japan, His Royal Highness the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, Duke of Nassau, the President of the United States of Mexico, His Royal Highness the Prince of Montenegro, His Majesty the King of Norway, the President of the Republic of Panama, the President of the Republic of Paraguay, Her Majesty the Queen of the Netherlands, the President of the Republic of Peru, His Majesty the Shah of Persia, His Majesty the King of Portugal and of the Algarves, etc., His Majesty the King of Romania, His Majesty the Emperor of all the Russias, the President of the Republic of Salvador, His Majesty the King of Serbia, His Majesty the King of Siam, His Majesty the King of Sweden, the Swiss Federal Council, His Majesty the Emperor of the Ottomans, the President of the Oriental Republic of Uruguay, the President of the United States of Venezuela. So before I move on, that's all just covered by list of contracting parties. But how different, how much changes in 113 years? 1907, 116 years. They're all kings or queens, princes, or presidents of a United States. So it's, yeah, there's so much we could get into just in that. Principalities, republics, and what is defense? But let's read through what they call the preamble, and you'll be able to look and see what's different. So, considering that while seeking means to preserve peace and prevent armed conflicts between nations, it is likewise necessary to bear in mind the case where an appeal to arms may be brought about by events beyond their responsibility to control. Being animated also by the desire to serve, even in this extreme case, the interests of humanity and the ever-progressive needs of civilization, and thinking it important with this object to revise the general laws and customs of war, with the view, on the one hand, of defining them with greater precision, and on the other hand, of confining them within limits intended to mitigate their severity as far as possible, have deemed it necessary to complete and render more precise in certain particulars the work of the first peace conference, which, following on the Brussels Conference of 1874, 1 year after the Slave Trade Act, and inspired by the ideas dictated by a wise and generous forethought, adopted provisions intended to define and regulate the usages of war on land, according to the views of the high contracting parties. These provisions, the drafting of which has been inspired by the desire to diminish the evils of war, so far as military requirements permit, are intended to serve as a general rule of conduct for the belligerents in their mutual relations and in their relations with the inhabitants. It has not, however, been found possible at present to concert stipulations covering all the circumstances which arise in practice. That word concert is interesting to me. What is a concert is there's harmony, there's a band, there's a chorus, if you will, a people, maybe, a consensus. So it's not been found possible at present to come to a common stipulation. Hard to condense all of this into all the circumstances which arise in practice. So maybe they were allowing for possibilities outside of what we would think, they would think at the time. I don't know. On the other hand, the high contracting parties clearly do not intend that unforeseen cases should, in default of written agreement, be left to the arbitrary opinion of military commanders. I.e., they don't want military commanders just unchained. Slave pun. They don't want them operating under their own whim. There needs to be an order here, according to the views of the high contracting parties. Until a more complete code of the laws of war can be drawn up, the high contracting parties deem it expedient to declare that, in cases not covered by the rules adopted by them, the inhabitants and the belligerents remain under the protection and governance of the principles of the law of nations, derived from the usages established among civilized peoples, from the laws of humanity, and from the dictates of the public conscience. They declare that it is in this sense especially that Articles 1 and 2 of the regulations adopted must be understood. The high contracting parties, wishing to conclude a fresh convention to this effect, have appointed as their plenipotentiaries, that is to say, names of plenipotentiaries not listed here. And if you were like me and you hadn't heard that word plenipotentiary, it's essentially the representative. Speaks on behalf of a nation, who, after having deposited their full powers, found to be in good and due form, have agreed upon the following. Now we'll go to Article 1. When my computer catches up. The contracting powers shall issue instructions to their armed land forces, which shall be in conformity with the regulations respecting the laws and customs of war on land, annexed to the present convention. So the contracting parties, are these the bankers? The high contracting parties? I don't know. They'll issue instructions to their armed land forces, which shall be in conformity with the regulations set out, which is annexed after all these articles. They shall follow what's to follow. Article 2. The provisions contained in the regulations referred to in Article 1, as well as in the present convention, do not apply except between contracting powers, and then only if all the belligerents are parties to the convention. So if they are not a signatory, then it doesn't apply to them. Article 3. A belligerent party which violates the provisions of the said regulations shall, if the case demands, be liable to pay compensation. It shall be responsible for all acts committed by persons forming part of its armed forces. So a belligerent party such as the Australian government, not the occupied, but the belligerent, that violates the provisions will be liable to pay compensation, and it shall be responsible for all acts committed by persons forming part of its armed forces, like the police. Operation accountability. Remember, Jesus said, I didn't come to break the law, I'm come to fulfill it. Article 4. The present convention, duly ratified, shall replace, as between the contracting powers, the Convention of 29 July 1899, respecting the laws and customs of war on land. 1. The Convention of 1899 remains in force as between the powers which signed it but which do not ratify the present convention. That's pretty straightforward. Article 5. The present convention shall be ratified as soon as possible. The ratifications shall be deposited at The Hague. The first deposit of ratification shall be recorded in a protocol signed by the representatives of the powers which take part therein, and by the Netherlands Minister for Foreign Affairs. The subsequent deposits of ratification shall be made by means of a written notification addressed to the Netherlands government and accompanied by the instrument of ratification. So that's interesting, why the Netherlands gets a special role, relegated to the Netherlands. A duly certified copy of the protocol relating to the first deposit of ratifications of the notifications mentioned in the preceding paragraph, and of the instruments of ratification, shall be immediately sent by the Netherlands government through the diplomatic channel to the powers invited to the second peace conference, as well as to the other powers which have acceded to the convention. The said government shall, in the cases contemplated in the preceding paragraph, inform them at the same time of the date on which it received the notification. So I'll go back up to Article 6. Non-signatory powers may accede to the present convention. So that just means those that hadn't signed on can, in the future, sign on and adhere. A power which desires to accede notifies its intention in writing to the Netherlands government, forwarding to it the act of access, which shall be deposited in the archives of the said government. The said government shall immediately forward to all the other powers a duly certified copy of the notification as well as of the act of accession, mentioning the date on which it received the notification. Keeping a record of who stands where. Article 7. The present convention shall take effect in the case of the powers which were parties to the first deposit of ratification, 60 days after the date of the protocol recording such deposit. 3. And in the case of the powers which shall ratify subsequently, on which shall accede, 60 days after the notification of their ratification or of their accession has been received by the Netherlands government. Article 8. In the event of one of the contracting powers wishing to denounce the present convention, the denunciation shall be notified in writing to the Netherlands government, which shall immediately communicate a duly certified copy of the notification to all the other powers, informing them of the date on which it was received. The denunciation shall only operate in respect of the denouncing power, and only on the expiry of 1 year after the notification has reached the Netherlands government. So you can't just go, wear out and then start committing war crimes. You need to plan it a year in advance. Article 9. A register kept by the Netherlands Ministry for Foreign Affairs shall record the date of the deposit of ratifications, effected in virtue of Article 5, paragraphs 3 and 4, as well as the date on which the notifications of accession, Article 6, paragraph 2, or of denunciation, Article 8, paragraph 1, have been received. Each contracting power is entitled to have access to this register and to be supplied with duly certified extracts from it. So that's just basically saying everyone needs to know, all contracting powers, all parties need to know where you stand. So carry arms openly. That will figure, I think, as we move on. And yeah, so it says, below Article 9, in faith whereof the plenipotentiaries have appended their signatures to the present convention, done at The Hague, the 18th of October, 1907, in a single original, which shall remain deposited in the archives of the Netherlands government, and of which duly certified copies shall be sent through the diplomatic channel to the powers invited to the second peace conference. Signatures not reproduced here. So now we go to the annex, where we get into the meat on the bone. Regulations respecting the laws and customs of war on land. Section 1 of belligerents. Chapter 1. The status of belligerent. Article 1. The laws, rights, and duties of war apply not only to the army, but also to military and volunteer corps, fulfilling all the following conditions. 1. They must be commanded by a person responsible for his subordinates. Note the word his. 2. They must have a fixed, distinctive sign recognizable at a distance. 3. They must carry arms openly. So what is it to bear arms? What is a call to arms? 4. They must conduct their operations in accordance with the laws and customs of war. In countries where militia or volunteer corps constitute the army, or from part of it, they are included under the denomination army. Article 2. The inhabitants of a territory not under occupation, who, on the approach of the enemy, spontaneously take up arms to resist the invading troops, without having had time to organise themselves in accordance with Article 1, shall be regarded as belligerents if they carry arms openly and if they respect the laws and customs of war. I was going to try to elaborate on that one, but it's not, as far as I can tell, relevant to us because that time is well and truly past. We are thoroughly occupied. Article 3. The armed forces of the belligerents may consist of combatants and non-combatants. In the case of capture by the enemy, both have the right to be treated as prisoners of war. So I may have misrepresented the word belligerent. Belligerent would appear now to apply to us, the occupied. Sorry, I'm still not clear on that. I'll clear it up as we go, hopefully. So, Chapter 2, Prisoners of War. Article 4. Prisoners of war are in the power of the hostile government, but not of the individuals or corps who captured them. They must be humanely treated. All their personal belongings, except arms, horses, and military papers, remain their property. So let's just think about what the Australian government is trying to do. Are we prisoners of war or are we slaves? You'll own nothing, remember. Prisoner of war owns everything except arms, horses, and military papers. Article 5. Prisoners of war may be interned in a town, fortress, camp, or other place, and are bound not to go beyond certain fixed limits, but they cannot be placed in confinement except as an indispensable measure of safety, and only while the circumstances which necessitate the measure continue to exist. So what is follow the rabbit? I'm up to Article 6. The state may employ the labour of prisoners of war, other than officers, according to their rank and capacity. The work shall not be excessive and shall have no connection with the operations of the war. Prisoners may be authorised to work for the public service, for private persons, or on their own account. Work done for the state is paid for at rates proportional to the work of a similar kind executed by soldiers of the National Army, or, if there are no such rates in force, at rates proportional to the work executed. When the work is for other branches of the public service, or for private persons, the conditions are settled in agreement with the military authorities. The wages of the prisoners shall go towards improving their position, and the balance shall be paid them on their release. Deductions on account of the cost of maintenance accepted. So I'm going to finish this part here, but I want to note a few things that reading through the laws on the table, one gets a very different sense of what the word war might actually mean. We conditioned to think about bunch of people just senselessly shooting at each other, slaughtering each other. But with War II, there are laws on the table. And Operation Accountability is about fulfilling the law, not overthrowing, but fulfilling the law. It's just we haven't known what the laws are. So if you want to see fulfillment, then check out the description below the video, because there are cases being prepared, and we can and will hold them accountable to the laws on the table.